Hi, I'm Josh Stack.
Hi, I'm Sam Fritchell. Welcome to Star Wars Deep Digging, Season 1, Episode 6, Part 2.
Okay, so allow me to introduce. Wait. Wouldn't this be season 2 since we're starting a new book?
Season 1 is the A New Hope series, Season 2 is the Empire Strikes Back series.
Well, then wouldn't this be episode 7?
Oh, yeah, Episode 7.
Alright, so,
Let me just say, Season 1, Episode 7, Part 2. Part 2 because we're starting a new book, Episode 7 because that's the episode, Season 1 because we're still on the New Hope series.
wait. Wouldn't that be season 1, part 2, episode 7?
Exactly.
Okay, but why didn't you say it in that order?
Oh, all right. Oh, my mistake. Season 1, Part 2, Episode 7.
Alright. So, today we have From a Certain Point of View, a collection of 40 short stories to celebrate the 40th anniversary of A New Hope. And, well, let's start with the first one. Remus by Gary Whitta. What is it that they've sent us? Captain Remus Antilles watched as Princess Leia Organa of Alderaan turned away from him, holding the data card he had handed to her. The data card for which almost the entire military might of the Rebel Alliance, both on the ground and in orbit above the planet Scarif, had just risked everything to steal from one of the most secure Imperial strongholds in the galaxy. So, Rogue One. The Grand all-or-nothing gambit had led to the single largest combat engagement in the long history of conflict between the Rebellion and the Empire, and one that, despite heavy losses, had resulted screamingly in a victory. Rebel forces have won their first space battle against the evil Galactic Empire. The card, and whatever highly praised data it held, had been delivered safely into the hands of one of the Alliance's most capable covert operatives. The rest was up to her. Hope, she replied as she looked ahead, through the forward viewpoint of the Tantai Force cockpit, to the limitless ocean of stars beyond. Always so damn enigmatic, thought Remus. Leia never told you more than you needed to know.
Hope. Foreshadowing to. Oh, wait, we're here already.
Yep. She had learned that was for the protection of others as much as her own. She had learned that lesson well, the princess who had become a galactic senator, the senator who had secretly risked her life countless times to help nurture a fledgling rebellion from a handful of squabbling, disgruntled star systems into the organized and dedicated alliance it had become. Still, no direct match for the awesome war power of the Empire, but enough to capture their most closely guarded secrets in a mission that even Remus thought breathless in its audacity. Enough, maybe, just enough, to give the oppressed peoples of the galaxy a fighting chance at freedom. Remus watched the stars outside stretch into a kaleidoscopic tunnel of light as the ship jumped into hyperspace. Then Leia turned back to him, and they both stepped through the cockpit door into the hallway. Will we make it? She asked. Before departure, Remus had warned her that her ship was not yet capable of even the routine flight to Tatooine, which had until recently been its own assignments. It had not even been able to travel to Scarif under its own power, carried instead in the belly of the rebel flagship Profundity as mechanical crews worked hurriedly to repair its overworked and malfunctioning hyperdrive. So yeah, in case this seems like it contradicts the previous book, that's the problem with trying to match up pre-Rogue One lore with post-Rogue One lore. By the time they arrived at Scarif, Remus was only able to assure that the Tantai IV could perform a hyperspace jump, not that it could withstand light-speed travel long enough to reliably get them to any given destination. I'll be able to give you a better answer in operations, he told her. Then let's go, she said, leading the way. Remus followed, forced to quicken his step in order to keep pace with her. They arrived at the ship's operations center to find several senior officers working frantically at their control stations. Status, Remus requested as the door closed behind him. We're maintaining light speed for now, the nearest officer informed him. Remains to be seen how long the engines can hold this up. Maintenance crews are doing all they can. If we can hold this speed, we'll be at Tatooine within the hour. But the drive's still in bad shape. Motivator could go at any time. Remus nodded. All this he knew. After the damage sustained on its last mission, the Tantai IV was in no shape for a desperate flight from the Empire. I wonder what that last mission was. For years, he had carefully steered his ship, through countless Imperial blockades and checkpoint, always able to avoid detection or suspicion. In case you're wondering why the toy was called a Rebel blockade runner. But now it had been spotted fleeing the scene of the most daring military assault in the history of the rebellion, carrying stolen goods that the Empire would go to any lengths to recover. Suddenly, the Tantai 4 was the most wanted ship in the galaxy, and it was in sorry shape. For the task of ferrying the most critical Imperial secrets ever captured, they could scarcely have picked a worse vessel at a worse time. But that was the hand they had been dealt, and Remus had no option now but to play it as best he could. The real problem is what we're leaving behind us, the officer continued. We can't exactly run quiet with a hyperdrive that's barely holding together. If the Empire detected any trace of an abnormal hyperspace wake when we jump to hyperspace, to lightspeed, it won't take them long to use it to track us. So, in case you're curious, the hyperspace wake is one of two alternate explanations for how the Empire managed to catch up to Leia so quickly. The other being that the Imperials had a spy on board, a reprogrammed protocol droid named U-3PO, who's basically a silver version of C-3PO.
Oh, I know U-3PO. Well, I know him from a Lego minifigure.
Yeah, Lego has covered just about every character. Remus sighed. He had dreaded this possibility and had warned Leia of it prior to their setting their escape route from Scarif. Typically, a jump to hyperspace is an acclaimed getaway, a ship's lightspeed trajectory impossible to track. But the Tantai 4's impaired hyperdrive was like a leaky oil pan. Oil pans canonically exist in the Star Wars universe, leaving behind it a residual energy signature that was unique and traceable. He wondered how long it would take the Empire, with all their resources, to no doubt already diverted to finding them, to pick up their trail and follow it. For that reason, Leia had thought it too great a risk to return to the Rebel headquarters at Yavin 4. Faced with no good option, she had ordered Remus to instead set course for Tatooine, their planned destination before the hurried redirection to Scarif. She hoped still to fulfill the vital mission that her father had entrusted to her earlier that same day, knowing that even if the Empire pursued them to that barren desert outworld, they would find nothing there but endless waste of sand. Well, okay, that's not quite true. There's lots of stuff on Tatooine. Other rebels, Tuskens, Black Sun operatives. Just so much. Especially in the video games where... Oh, man.
Actually, Tatooine... Yeah, there may be a lot of stuff on Tatooine throughout the years. I've even heard rumors that Tatooine was a site for a small skirmish during the Clone Wars.
That's it? That's all you've heard? Oh, wait until you get to the really weird stuff. Ask me to tell you about the Jowenko lava beast sometime.
Ooh.
That was crazy. Remus saw the grim expression on the face of the ship's bosun, who was examining new readouts at his station. Bosun is not a Star Wars term. It's a real life naval thing. Don't tell me it gets worse, he said. The Profundity took heavy damage when she was disabled, the bosun reported. Her electrical system's overloaded, and since we were still docked, the overload fried half our grid, too. We barely have deflectors or weapons. If it comes to a fight, we won't be able to put up much of one. So there it was. Surely only a matter of time before the Empire found them, and little chance of defending themselves once they did. Remus tried to think of a time during all their many high-risk missions and close escapes when they had faced a situation as dire as this and came up wanting. What about the escape pods, he asked. As you ordered, said Helfun Rum, the Tantai 4's stalwart security officer. All secured and ready to launch. Remus noticed Leia looking at him inquisitively. Your Highness, if we are stopped and boarded by the Empire, my first priority is to get you to safety, he told her. At that point, the pods may be our only option. Surely it will not come to that, said Corla Mitone, Tantai 4's chief petty officer and a long-serving retainer of the Organa royal household. We're still flying under a diplomatic flag. The Empire would not dare board us. Remus considered that. Tactically, it still held true. The Tantai 4 was officially a consular ship that Leia used in the performance of her duties as Alderaan's representative in the Galactic Senate. As a diplomat, she enjoyed special legal protections that meant not even the Imperial military could board, search, or in any way impede the free passage of her ship without her express permission. So it looks like Leia's diplomatic immunity is about to get revoked. It was a broad and very convenient privilege that in the past had allowed her and Remus to conduct acts of espionage and subterfuge right under the Empire's nose. But what Remus found himself doubting, given the...
I just thought of this. Maybe Leia's diplomatic immunity is about to expire. But wait, what if Leia has extended diplomatic immunity? Diplomatic immunity is invalid if the diplomatic immunity is not used for its intended purpose.
Well, I mean, I guess Leia has not been using it for its intended purpose.
Mm-hmm.
Hmm. But now Remus found himself doubting, given the Imperial import of what had been stolen from Scarif, that it would be enough to protect them this time. This just came in, the bosun reported, looking up from his station. The Empire has issued a priority red directive. Any ships matching the description of a CR-90 Corvette are to be stopped and held. Well, that's gonna make the Empire very busy. There are a lot of CR-90 Corvettes. By the way, Corvette is not a reference to the car. There was an actual type of naval ship hundreds of years ago called Corvettes. Look it up. Priority Red means all previous orders and duties are immediately superseded for all Imperial ships galaxy-wide. I've never seen this much comm traffic. The Empire's flooding every frequency with it. Whatever Rogue One beamed us from Scarif, they really want it back. All eyes were on Leia as the full gravity of their situation began to sink in. Remus had seen this look in her face before. She was concerned, worried even, but it showed in a way that only those few who knew her best, who had served with her longest, could detect. To all else, she projected only firm resolve in the face of crushing adversity. But he knew how bad this latest news was. The ship's fragile consular status aside, one of their few slim hopes lay in the fact that the CR-90 was a ship common throughout the galaxy, literally thousands of them in service, and the Tantai-4 looked like almost any of them. Nuts. The author was ahead of me on that.
Yes.
But though they were a needle in a haystack, needles and hay exist in... Okay, I really need to stop doing this. I'm sorry. The Empire had the resources, and apparently the determination, to tear the entire haystack apart in order to find them. Like Alexander the Great cutting the Gordian knots, which did not actually happen, by the way. Sorry, I know I'm reaching, but there is not much to talk about here. Here. Any diplomatic protocol would not stand in their way. Briefly, his thoughts turned to the innocent crews of other Corellian corvettes that even now were being stopped and invaded by armed Imperial boarding parties. Some would be foolish enough to resist. If the Empire does find us, Toshma Jeffkin, the Tantai-4's second officer, pondered aloud. I'm pretty sure Toshma Jeffkin is a background character in the movie itself, but I haven't checked that. Then let's make sure that they don't, said Leia. Remus looked at Jeffkin. He had served with the man for years, shared many close encounters with Imperial forces, and knew that little rattled him. Wait. Now I remember. Toshma Jeffkin was the sole survivor of the Darth Vader hallway scene in Rogue One.
Oh, yeah. Yeah. Do you think he's still terrified of Darth Vader, even though Darth Vader's, gone by not killing rebels by now?
That is called PTSD, Sam.
Yeah. I'm just saying I think he still has PTSD after the whole Vader hallway scene.
Shell-shocked? More like lightsaber-shocked. We are going to chaos and the void for that one. And knew that little rattled him. He looked rattled now. His face was a ghostly white, his hands were clammy, and he seemed to be gazing into nothing, the haunted countenance of a man who had seen something that can never be unseen. Tosh, what is it? Remus asked. Jeffkin looked at him with hollow eyes. That thing in the hallway while we were trying to get off the profundity. It killed at least a dozen of my men, cut them down like they were nothing. Blasters had no effect. It just kept on coming, kept on killing. It was like a nightmare. I've never seen anything like it. Like some kind of Death Angel. Azrael. Remus and Leia exchanged a grim look as they realized what this must mean. To retrieve what had been stolen from them, the Empire dispatched none other than Darth Vader himself, and that was the most dire news of all. I like how they hear the term Death Angel and they're like, oh yeah, that's definitely Vader. Remus returned to his quarters to write while he still had time.
That is Vader. Do you know anyone else who wears a black armored suit, a black cloak, a scary helmet, and wields a red lightsaber chopping down rebel troopers?
I think I could find a few. Remus returned to his quarters to write while he still had time. As captain, he knew that he would go down with his ship if necessary, but in case it came to that, he would first dispatch a final message to his family back home. He had already thought it through. As his crew piled into the anti-Vor escape pods to evade Imperial capture, he would hand someone he trusted an encrypted data cylinder, with instructions that would be delivered to his wife on Alderaan. As he sat down to write, that grim scenario seemed more likely to him than any other. He'd had a bad feeling about this mission from the beginning. Hastily improvised, orders rewritten at the last minutes, and now here they were, barreling headlong in a broken ship toward the edge of the galaxy, carrying the last best hope for the survival of the rebellion, and the entire Empire searching for them. He would write 3 letters, one for his beloved wife, the other two for her to give to each of their young daughters when they were old enough to understand. You know, it's weird. This character has been around for decades since the first time we're hearing about a family. He had so much he wanted to tell them. More than anything, he wanted to know that even though they would grow up never knowing their father, it was not for lack of his love for them. No, it was because he loved them so, because he was determined they have the life they deserved, that he had given everything to help secure it for them. That was the most bitter irony of war. The greatest acts of love for your family were the ones that kept you apart from them. He tried to write, but no words came. He knew what he wanted to say, but not how to say it, and the longer he stared at the screen, the more agonizing the prospect of composing his final words to those he most loved became. To his wife, he wanted to say he was sorry for all that she had been asked to give so that he might serve the princess, his princess, and her rebellion, often leaving her to raise their children alone for weeks and months at a time. He had barely seen either of his daughters since they were born. As greatly as that pained him, the sacrifice had always seemed worth it to Ramus, inspired as he had been by Leia's own passion to fight for a future in which not just his children, but sons and daughters throughout the galaxy could grow up free from Imperial tyranny, something they only read about in history texts. You know, I really think we should have a short story or something where we see the future timeline where new characters are reading the history text that retell the events of the movies, just to like see how it compares and contrasts with.
I was thinking the same thing, actually, but I was also thinking that Star Wars characters should reread the history text about things that happened during the Old Republic era.
That would be a great way to integrate them into canon. Hooray for the Quell Droma epics, or whatever they were called in that one role-playing game source book. And Leia, who had come to trust and rely upon Ramus like few others save her own father, had insisted on ensuring that his family was well provided for during his time by her side. But that all seemed like cold comfort now as he reflected on how much precious time had been lost, and how little he might now have left as the Empire tightened its noose around his ship. It was only when he had finally begun to write that the ship lurched afterward hard, almost throwing him from his chair. He recognized it instantly, the sudden violent deceleration when a ship dropped out of light speed unexpectedly. Looking to his viewport, he saw the tunnel of shimmering blue light outside dissolve away. Okay, so hyperspace does canonically have that whole blue tunnel thing. Like, that's not just something they do for effects purposes. Replaced by an inky void punctuated with pinpoints of light. The Tantai 4 was no longer in hyperspace, but back among the stars. Exposed and easily detectable by any Imperial ship that might be in the area, which would certainly be looking for any vessel matching their description. He sprang from his chair and bolted toward the door, leaving the letters unwritten. "What happened?" Ramus asked as he entered the cockpit. "Motivator finally gave out," the ship's pilot reported. The instrument panel before him and his co-pilot was ablaze with blinking warning lights. "We're at sublight for the rest of the way. Where are we?" The co-pilot worked the nav console, punched up a local sensor image. "We're close, about a quarter parsec out."
Wait, now I think about it, hyperspace does canonically have that blue tunnel. So if you're traveling in hyperspace, don't look into the blue light. Don't look into the blue light!
Yeah, there's inconsistent lore that it's bad for your mental health to just stare off into it, but it's hard to tell. Nobody really cares about hyperspace enough to, write about how it works. Ramus stepped forward, distinctly behind the two helmsmates so that he might see through the cockpit viewports. And there it was, barely discernible to an untrained eye, but Ramus knew what he was looking for. From this far out, Tatooine was little more than a speck, just a tiny pale orange dot adjacent to two far larger, brilliant lights, the planet's binary suns. How long at best speed? They were so close, yet still so far. If the hyperdrive had held out for just a few moments longer, they would already be in the planet's orbit. And now forced to hobble the rest of the way at sublight. What if timeline, where they managed to land on Tatooine before Vader gets there?
What if timeline before they manage to get on Tatooine before Vader gets there?
Yep. 8 minutes, the pilot responded. "I think we'll make it." There was hope in the man's voice, a sense of relief. The first Ramus had heard from anyone since their narrow escape from Scarif, and now he felt it too. 8 minutes. If they could hold out just that much longer, he could get everybody to the surface and scuttle the ship. Yep. Then, at one of the planet's infamously no questions asked spaceports, he'd procure another vessel, unmarked and untraceable, with which to spirit the princess to safety. Well, they're giving us a lot of details for the what-if timeline. Maybe we could write that fanfic someday. For a brief moment, he allowed hope back in, considered the possibility that maybe, just maybe, there was a way out of this. That the princess might still be safe after all, that the stolen data might still find its way back to Rebel commands, that he and his loved ones might still... The impact rocked the ship so hard it slammed Ramus against the cockpit bulkhead. Like a passing breeze, his reverie vanished as quickly as it had come, and a shrill cockpit alarm sounded. "Star Destroyer!" the pilot exclaimed in response to the new sensor reading that had just appeared directly behind them. "They're firing on us!" "Man the turbo lasers and return fire," Ramus ordered. "Put everything we've got into the aft deflector shield and get us to that planet." He assembled his security forces and gave them their orders, sending every man he could armed to the forward docking hatch to set up a defensive bulwark. I remember watching this scene with Dad, and he said the guys were so poorly trained. Something about how you're the one who's supposed to blow the door open first so that you get the first shot in.
Actually, Republic Commando confirms that.
Mom, show this episode to Dad, please, just to see if he remembers that. He knew their chances of repelling an Imperial boarding party with the meeker forces at his command were slim, but that they might at least buy him time to get the civilians to safety.
Basically, here's what happens. Here's the thing about Republic Commando and what you do about when you go into a door, and what these guys should learn from that in the book. 1, you blow the door open. 2, you toss a grenade. 3, you start blasting.
Indeed. As his troops departed, the ship was rocked hard again, and a loud explosion sounded somewhere far behind Remus. His comlink crackled to life, and he raised to hear the sounds of chaos and panic voices from the cockpit. "Sir, that last hit overloaded our shield projector. We had to shut down the main reactor before it blew. We can't maintain distance on that destroyer. It's closing fast." "Distance to Tatooine?" .27, came the reply. They would not get away, Remus knew, but the escape pod still could. Remus heard a muffled metallic echo all around him, the sound of the ship's hull groaning under outward pressure, and knew what that meant. The destroyer had locked onto him once its tractor beam was pulling them in. "Sir, they just... I know. Get to your escape pods." And he ran, searching desperately for the princess. The ship was lost, he knew.
I'm glad the escape pods are still there.
You know, interestingly, in the radio drama, they actually started launching them earlier, empty, as a distraction. The ship was lost, he knew, but he could still save her. He could find her nowhere. He rushed through the hallways searching as all around him his crew helped the princess's senatorial staff pile hurriedly into escape pods. There weren't enough for everyone, he knew, and as it had always been with the rebellion, they had to make the best of what little they had. And good people would have to die. He heard the distant explosion, knew that it had come from the forward airlock. Then the sound of a furious exchange of blaster fire. Imperial troops were now coming aboard his ship. Not much time. Have to find her. He had not dedicated so much of his life to protecting her, only to fail now in her most critical hour of need. Finally, he spotted her as he rounded a corner. She was at the far end of the white-walled hallway, alone save for an R2 unit, warbling affirmatively as she spoke to it. "Your Highness!" When Leia turned to see him, she quickly ushered the droid away. Puzzled, Remus laced to follow her, catching up to her as she slipped through a bulkhead doorway into a shadowy side corridor. "You must come with me. I have to get you to a pod," he implored. "I'm not leaving," she said. "Get as many as you can to safety." Remus knew by the defiant tenor of her voice that there would be no arguing with her. "The transmission from Scarif? Leave that to me," she said, a purposeful glint in her eye. Behind her, the R2 unit bleeped at her urgently. The sounds of blaster fire were getting closer now and less frequent, as the Imperial borders depleted the Tantive Force's meager defensive force. Mere moments remained. "Your Highness, you have your orders, Captain, and my gratitude for everything." Leia raised her hand and touched it to Remus's cheek, giving him a warm, bittersweet smile both of affection and of sorrow. Both of them knew that this was the last time they would ever see each other. And then, she was gone, the little droid trundling away into the shadows after her. Okay, so, like I said, there's not a lot to talk about here, so I'll just reference the radio drama again. In that one, Leia doesn't... nuts, because this creates a contradiction, because the last book was based off the radio drama, Leia doesn't meet R2 until after, she gets separated from Captain Antilles. I'll check Wikipedia to see how they reconciled that.
Yeah, I noticed that this looks connected to the book, but some stuff in this book seems different than the book. So we're actually at the... So in this part, we're actually at the princess part of the first book, but the events in this one are played out a little differently.
From different points of view, you could say?
Exactly.
There was little left for him to do. His ship captured and swarming with Imperial stormtroopers, all but a few escape pods already away. All that remained was to end his life in the way that he had always lived it, fighting. He rushed down the hall, ducking behind a bulkhead as he saw the first stormtrooper around the corner up ahead, firing. This is actually a lot cooler than his fate in the Legends continuity, where the radio drama has him captured rather easily. Though he does put up a defiant well, you know. Ramus took aim and returned fire, dropping the stormtrooper and then another. Then the number of troopers who were arriving, taking positions, firing at him.
Well, Captain Antilles does do something defiant. He's defiant straight to Vader's face.
Oh yeah, both continuities. Firing at him quickly became too many, and his only recourse was to run. He sprinted away, knowing that he was quickly running out of ship, but determined nonetheless to make the Empire expend every possible resource, every ounce of sweat, every precious second, before they would inevitably take him. Maybe just enough to buy his princess time to execute whatever last-ditch plan she might have. He was almost at the hallway junction leading back to his quarters when he was tackled and brought to the ground, 3 Imperial troopers forcing him into submission. He struggled, resisting them to the last until a rifle stock to the side of his head dazed him, took his strength. In the radio's room, they punched him in the gut. "This one's the captain," he heard the trooper's modulated voice behind his right ear as his arms were pulled behind his back. "We need him alive." And then he was up again, his visions a hazy blur as he felt himself being hauled forward, his boots dragging along the floor behind him. "My lord," he heard the trooper's voice behind him again. "The captain." Ramus felt a shadow looming over him a moment before something cold and metallic, like the jaws of a vice, clamped hard around his throat. As his eyes widened, he realized the black shape that now towered over him, though little more than a dark blur, was Darth Vader, and that the mechanical grip around his throat was a hand. And the stormtroopers moved to surround them both, as though a Sith Lord needed any assistance whatsoever. "The Death Star plans are not in the main computer," an arriving trooper reported. "So that's what they sent us." Even in his disoriented state, Ramus now understood why the rebel fleet had gambled everything to steal that data. And why the Empire dispatched its most fearsome, unstoppable asset in its attempt to recover it. That hideous spherical leviathan that he had seen lay waste to the surface of Scarif, unimaginable in size, unthinkable in purpose. In the radio drama, Bail Organa actually says, "But this is unthinkable," when he first learns what the Death Star is going to do. Which does seem a little weird after decades of continuity have revealed that superweapons, especially ones designed to depopulate entire planets, are ridiculously commonplace. Unstoppable asset in its attempt to recover it. That hideous spherical leviathan that he had seen lay waste to the surface of Scarif, unimaginable in size, unthinkable in purpose. The Empire's monstrous attempt to secure ultimate domination over a galaxy, slowly finding the will to oppose him. The secrets to destroying it were in the hands of his princess, and he would gladly die to protect them. "Where are those transmissions you intercepted?" Vader demanded. "What have you done with those plans?" Ramus fought uselessly to pry the fingers from around his neck, felt his feet leave the floor as Vader lifted him effortlessly, all the while tightening his grip, choking the life from him. "We intercepted no transmissions," he spluttered, fighting for breath. "This is a consular ship. We're on a diplomatic mission." "If this is a consular ship," Ramus only vaguely heard as he began to lose consciousness, his vision dimming around its edges, "where is the ambassador?" Even as Ramus felt the last of his life ebbing away, he found himself strangely hopeful once more. He knew, of course, that his story had reached its end, that he would never again see his beloved wife and children on Alderaan, and yet still, he had hope. He hoped that somehow Leia knew of a way out even from this, hoped that the glimmer in her eye that he had seen in that hallway was the gem of an idea that might yet see the stolen data returned safely to the rebellion. He hoped that it would empower them to destroy that hateful weapon, to turn the tide of war, to rally more systems to their cause, to allow a galaxy, once more, to breathe free. In his final moments, he hoped. Alright, on to the next one. The Bucket by Christy Golden. TK-4601 was disproportionately grateful for the Stormtrooper helmets. You know, I think all these Stormtroopers had different designations in Legends, but I've never bothered to check. I think one of them was like DV691 or 692 or whatever. For one thing, it smashed down the unruly tuft of blonde hair that would never obey a comb or brush, the one that made him look like he was 13. His fair skinned reddened and paled easily, too, which meant that no matter how diligent he was in schooling his expression, his coloring always betrayed him. With the helmet on, though, and with the device that rendered the voices of stormtroopers almost completely identical, his reactions, good or bad, were much harder for others to determine. Completely identical. A reference to how, they kept using similar voice actors. He was particularly appreciative of today, as he was grinning like an idiot. He couldn't believe his first assignment straight out of the academy had been aboard an Imperial Star Destroyer. Not just any Star Destroyer either. TK-4601, also known as Tarvin Larika, served on the Devastator, the flagship of Lord Vader himself. He was now a part of Vader's personal legion, Vader's Fist. Oh yeah, the good old 501st. And they have got so much lore because they're...
The 501st, Vader's Fist. Well, they were originally created when the original 501st sacked the Jedi Temple. And they have a long story going up to, well, after the Imperial remnant is gone.
Let's just say they're based on a real-life cosplay group that Mom might recognize, because I think she's mentioned it before. Today, a thrill of excitement had laced the a junior member to be sure, but he was still an official member. Today, a thrill of excitement laced the activity of the finely tuned military instrument that was Vader's Fist. Lord Vader himself, he of the black gleaming armor, the ominous breath... I can't do the voice. The deep, resonant voice, and the unfathomable command over objects and people. If he wanted to give chase to this vessel as it sped away from the Battle of Scarif, but as far as EK-4601 was concerned, the rumors had more of truth than fiction about them. Behind the buckets, as the helm was sometimes called, bucketheads, no one could see his brow furrowed in concentration, his blue eyes narrowed. No one could see the joy he took in a successful mission with no casualties either.
Back during the years of the Old Republic, I've heard Mandalorians be called bucketheads.
Nor when he was reluctant to follow orders that sometimes seemed to border on senseless cruelty. So he's a more... Do you think the Stormtroopers are more lawful neutral? Yeah, they're lawful neutral, Vader's lawful evil, though I guess it varies from Stormtrooper to Stormtrooper. He was getting better at pushing that part down, though. Oh, yeah, happens to all of them eventually. Earlier, TK-4601 had stood rigidly at attention while Vader, standing a mere meter away at the most, had grasped Captain Antilles of the Tantive-4 by the throat, lifted him off the ground, and interrogated him. "Where are those transmissions you intercepted?" Vader had boomed, in that sonorous yet dreadful voice that death itself might use. "What have you done with those plans?" "We intercepted no transmissions! This is a consular ship! We're on a diplomatic mission!" The Tantive-4 belonged to the House of Organa of Alderaan. TK-4601 knew that both father and daughter of that house were members of the Imperial Senate. If this is a consular ship, where is the ambassador? As seemed to be a not uncommon progression with Lord Vader, he'd grown so furious that his fingers crushed the man's windpipe before the important Orcian captain could even manage an answer. TK-4601 could hear the vertebrae snapping like dried twigs. By the way, according to what I've learned, they created that sound effect using the crushing of walnuts. He swallowed hard. The bucket concealed all. Vader had ordered Commander TK-9091 to search the ship, tear it apart, were his exact words, until the plans were found. Yeah, Vader is unusually angry in that scene. It's not really in character for him. As for passengers, unlike the late Captain Antilles, they were to be taken alive. Well, okay, technically Captain Antilles was taken alive.
You thought, Vader was angry in that scene, but you haven't seen Vader angry. Well, not in the way some people have when they fail Vader.
Yep. And so the 4 stormtroopers had been sent to search for the ill-fated ship's passengers. They were now poking around in various corridors, closets, and other out-of-the-way places in a life-and-death game of hide-and-seek. TK-4601's heart was still racing, and he... Oh man, wouldn't it be cool if the rebels had, set up an ambush or something? I mean, they can't because they're all either dead or captured at this
Yeah.
point, but still. TK4601's heart was still racing, and he could feel the heat in his cheeks and the smile on his face. He deliberately pushed the casual murder of the captain out of his mind, and now he was beyond excited. Interesting term. Murder, not execution.
I'm thinking of this. What if, when invading the Tantive 4, they expected to be shot by rebels, so they decide, let's use each other as human shields?
That does sound like an order Vader would give. He and now he was beyond excited. He felt exultant. They were not just conducting random raids on sullen populations of distant worlds. They were in search of the real thing. Real rebels with real cunning who had managed to steal plans from a major Imperial base that ought to have been impregnable. Clever creatures, the rebels, he thought. He would never admit it, but there was much to be admired about them. Do you think this guy would make a good Mandalorian?
Yeah. Well, he would if he learned of honor.
Seems to be being pretty honorable right now. Rumor, that sweet, swirling, shape-shifting creature, added that the missing ambassador was senatorial royalty. Princess Leia Organa of Alderaan, to be specific.
Honor's not the only thing that could make him a Mandalorian. The question still remains, what kind of Mandalorian? And that question is, has he ever removed his helmet?
He seems to prefer not to. Yeah, bucketheads, all the same. Both it was a logical conclusion, considering the Tantive 4 was owned by her father. Both she and Bail Organa had publicly expressed sympathy for the rebels' cause. That didn't mean they were themselves rebels, of course, but what if they were? TK4601 badly wanted to talk to TK3338, who was following immediately behind him in their sweep, and ask if he thought it was true. What was she like, this senatorial princess? She couldn't really be just 19, could she? Younger than he was and already a senator. Astonishing. It wouldn't be surprising. Oh, by the way, in case anyone didn't know that Leia was just 19, yeah, you wouldn't expect that because Carrie Fisher was in her 20s at this point. Not sure if it was early or late 20s. It wouldn't be surprising if she had indeed been seduced by the siren song of the rebellion, its championing of the innocent, its defiance of the order offered by the Empire. He'd been 19 once too and remembered the appeal such ideals could have, but he'd been smart and resisted that call. He was a staunch Imperial. Yeah, he's gonna regret that later. An emperor outranked a princess, and the Senate's days were numbered. Blind loyalty, true, lawful, neutral. This is Inspector Javert over again. Think we'll find any of them? Asked TK4247, who was bringing up the rear. He was newer and more naive than TK4601 had been when he joined Vader's Legion. Lord Vader will be pleased with us if we do, TK9091 answered. He didn't say the opposite, that Lord Vader would be displeased if they did not. TK4601 didn't even want to think about that. I want them alive, Vader had said. Their blasters were set to kill. They were in a battlefield even now. Too many of the crew were loose and armed, wandering about and opening fire for the stormtroopers to take chances. This is what I'm talking about with the ambush. TK9091, taking point, as was his right, had ordered them to kill the crew, but switched to stun upon sighting anyone who might be a passenger. Okay, crew is distinct from passengers. That must be what Antilles was talking about when he mentioned civilians earlier, even though we don't actually see any of them in the movie. When we find the senator, chimed in TK3338. Same thing, stun, but we don't know for certain that she's here, the commander answered. Don't let down your guard. If this really is a rebel ship, they're cornered animals now, and they're going to fight dirty. Of course they would, lying through their teeth about their illegal activities, hiding in shadows, dirty fighters. Oh, let's never let this guy meet Saw Gerrera. He would be ticked. But after the quick flush of excitement and anticipation, the routine of checking corridor after corridor faded before the mundanity of the task.
Oh yeah, speaking of Saw, isn't he space dust by now?
Oh yeah. Well, let's hope he never meets anyone like Saw, of which there are a lot. And then all at once, mundanity was shattered. There's one, TK9091 said, turning to TK4601. Set for stun. TK4601 instantly adjusted his blaster setting and turned to look. The instant lasted less than a heartbeat, but TK4601 felt it was frozen, locked in time. Her clothing was so white as to almost glow, her skin smooth and pale as cream, as pale as his own, though her long glossy hair gathered up in elaborate and efficient twin buns on either side of her face was a rich, warm brown, not the bright sunny yellow of his. She was so little. TK4601 had imagined that rebel women would be strong and muscular, tall, powerful warriors. Okay, now I'm just imagining the Rebel Alliance version of Wonder Woman. This one stood barely a meter and a half and looked like she might break if held too tightly. But her eyes, they were not cold, those brown orbs. They were steady, however, and they were calm. And they told him as clearly as if she had shouted the words, "I will never yield." She gripped a small, handheld blaster, the barrel pointing up. Suddenly, TK-4601 understood how it was that this 19-year-old girl was more of a woman than most twice her age. He understood how she had become a popular senator, why she had sympathy for the rebellion, why people followed her. And in that instant that lasted for an eternity, he also knew that they, elite members of Vader's Fist, were going to be too slow, that their commander had very wrongly judged this woman harmless, had reacted far too casually, and was about to pay the price before any of them could react. The white sleeves fell away from her slender arms as she lifted the blaster. TK-9091 fell, his armor scorched and smoking. The movement shocked TK-4601 out of his reverie. Time, which had slowed to a crawl, sped up again, rushed to meet him, and he fired his own blaster directly at the woman who could only be Princess Leia Organa. She collapsed instantly, striking the cold gray surface hard with no chance to break or fall. She lay sprawled, her tiny, delicate fingers still clutching the blaster. TK-4601 rushed toward her, suddenly seized with worry that he had hit too hard. That she was dead. Oh yeah, brain damage is no joke, people. Protect your head. He felt a strong and, he knew, treasonous wave of relief when he realized this was not the case. She'll be alright. But TK-9091 won't. Huh? Remember that tail scouric?
Ah, yeah. He won't.
He felt a strong... He realized that his words were heavy with unexpected, unwanted emotion. It sounds more like amusement in the movie. But thanks to the bucket, they came out sounding as clipped and precise as they always did. He took a breath. "Inform Lord Vader we have a prisoner." It presaged dark things that Vader specifically wanted to interrogate this one. He himself had encountered his commander only a few times, and that was enough, what he would do to her. No, he would not be swayed by a pretty face and a mien filled with resolve. The princess would have been delighted if her shot had dispatched TK-9091 or himself or the other two in the patrol group. "Sir," TK-4247 said to him, "the commander's dead." Dead? It wasn't possible. The white plastoid shields protected the soldiers encased inside them, diffusing blasts so that most shots aren't lethal. But the princess had aimed true and from only 3 meters away. I really wish that we would have at least one instance of a stormtrooper getting back up after getting shot, just so their armor doesn't seem completely useless. Because it always seems like the rebels have just good enough aim to hit precisely where they need to in order to put stormtroopers down for good. Though, it would make more sense for video game mechanics if stormtroopers could take multiple blaster hits. TK-4247 was bent over him, and now he turned his helmeted face to his new commander. "Orders, sir?" "Sir, with the death of TK-9091, the role of commanding officer fell to TK-4601. He wanted to climb high in the ranks, but not like this." "I just can't wait to be commander." For a moment, he didn't reply. He knew the orders. Stormtroopers lay where they fell until after the battle, and TK-9091 could be no exception to that rule. TK-4601 could still hear the screams out in the corridors, both the high-pitched sounds of blasters firing and the cries of agony from their victims. It's weird that we never hear anyone screaming in the movie. He strode to where their captive lay. Her body was still limp and her face slack. Its fire was unquelled, but its beauty still lingered. She would wake in a few minutes, perhaps feeling slightly hungover from the effects of the stun pulse, but as he had told the group, fine. Unlike TK-9091, his commanding officer, his friend, the one who cracked the stupidest jokes in the world in his off hours, but who was all measures when he donned the uniform, except this time he'd underestimated the enemy. A stupid, stupid mistake. See, this is what makes these from a certain point of view stories interesting. These disposable, nameless, faceless cannon fodder, or just nameless cannon fodder in the face, when it comes to the rebels, they've all got stories of their own, which is very reflective of real life. How many times have the history book allowed thousands to go unmourned and unmentioned? Ah well. Except this time he'd underestimated the enemy. The stupid, stupid mistake. The prisoner stirred now, groggy, moaning softly. True to her rebel spirit, though, the first thing she did was start to raise the pistol. TK-4601 kicked it away angrily. She gazed up at him, blinking rapidly as her eyes slowly focused. At the sight of his face, his helmet, an expression of disgust fell across her face. She woke up that quickly? They should have said the sun setting higher. That beautiful visage was as much a face of the enemy as any scarred, bearded one. Leia Organa was a killer. She looked at them and did not see the people, only the empire they served. To her, Tarvin Larica had no face, no name, only a number. He was nothing more than a uniform of the hated foe, to be shot at and eliminated as quickly as possible. Bringing back any memories of playing video games and mowing down stormtroopers by the hundreds?
Oh yeah. I'm currently playing one where I mow down stormtroopers by the hundreds right now.
What measure is a mook? He reached down and grabbed her wrist, hauling her to her feet. The princess struggled, but TK-3338 pressed the blaster into her back. She stiffened and stilled. Lord Vader wants to see you, Senator Organa, TK-4601 said. He snapped a pair of stun cuffs around her slender wrist. Stun cuffs are basically just handcuffs, but, in space. You can either come along with us on your own 2 feet, or we'll stun you again and bring you to him that way. Your decision. For a moment, he thought she would lunge at him. Instead, she composed herself. I'll walk. Same way she said she would walk instead of being dragged by Vader telekinetically. That's still such a funny mental image to him. Her voice held no quiver at all. It was as cool and regal as the rest of her. But DK-4601 thought of Vader's abilities and the torture droid, and he suddenly abruptly did not want to be the one who delivered her to the utter lack of mercy she would receive at Darth Vader's hands. To the ominous whir of the hovering torture droid and its myriad drugs to which to torment the prisoners. It's weird he doesn't know the name of IT-0. He said on the comm, "This is TK-4601. TK-9091 is down. We have a prisoner in custody. Request 2 additional troops to escort prisoner to Lord Vader per his instructions." Copy, TK-4601. We see your position. TK-7624 and TK-8332 are en route. Thus explaining why there are 4 stormtroopers escorting Leia in the movie, despite her having killed one of them earlier. I know it's only people like us who worry about this kind of stuff.
4 stormtroopers. That's good. And they actually mean it this time.
The other 2 looked at each other, then at him. Sir? He ignored them and continued speaking to the comm. Request permission to transfer to active duty unit for the duration of the battle. Permission granted, came the voice. Nothing official, but I've got a hunch we'll be sending some troopers to the surface if Vader doesn't find what he wants here. No stone unturned. A lot of sand there, though. Copy that, TK-4601 said immediately. Transfer me to that unit if it's deployed. Leia Organa's eyes narrowed as he regarded him speculatively. Doubtless his team was startled and wondering what the hell he was doing. He was a member of Vader's Fist. He could be here fighting, killing rebels, doing what they had trained for, and instead he'd requested what amounted to an emotion. They'd be even more shocked if they knew what he was thinking. TK-4601 loved the Empire. He believed in it. He knew it could bring order and peace to the galaxy. But he also knew that he couldn't keep doing what he was doing now. Killing rebels while looking into their faces, their eyes, seeing them open and exposed, emotions naked to them, while they only saw the flat black and white. He could still kill them, but only when the battlefield was even. Only when he couldn't see them, as he saw this senator, this princess, this rebels. He could shoot them out of the sky, and he would, but not shoot them in the heart. Reminds me of Expounded Universe, like Jeff and John's joke about how killing is okay so long as you do it in a spaceship.
Yeah.
But yeah, a lot easier to kill people when you don't have to look them in the face, which will be relevant later on in this book. 2 new stormtroopers arrived. TK-9091 was left where he fell. Per orders. He'd have understood. The 4 escorted the princess to meet the Dark Lord, each of them towering above her diminutive height. As TK-4601 watched them go, the princess turned to look at him searchingly. Spontaneously, without thinking, he removed the helmets. The princess seemed startled to see him. A human male not much older than she, fair-haired, blue eyes, his cheeks flushed. Their gazes locked for a moment. Then she gave him a slight nod and turned around. TK-4601 didn't kid himself that she understood the gesture, or that they had made any kind of connection. But damn it, he had reminded her that there was a person inside the plastoid armor. And more importantly, he had reminded himself. The Sith of Data Work by Ken Liu. Alright, this is a much more comedic one, and exists mostly just to explain away a plot hole. I remember how Darks and Droids explained away the plot hole. Well, why didn't they ever have R2 just sabotage the Star Destroyer's guns? He could totally do that.
Yeah.
Oh yeah, baby. The guns aren't working. They must have short-circuited. Psst, Arvira, I need your help. I, I looked up from the tiny text scrolling by on my screen. Okay, Arvira's not in the movie, but everyone else here is. Oh, behind the stacks of tablets teetering on my desk appeared the ancient face of Bulvan, gunnery captain. I think they all got their names in like one of the card games or something. I'm kind of in the middle of something here, I said, gesturing vaguely at
Yes, I do.
the tables full of data work. Interruptions were part of my job, but surely you could see I needed a chance to catch up. Bureaucracy. Wonder if we'll ever get a Star Wars version of Parks and Rec. Everyone thought being Fleet Logistics Liaison Grade 4 on an Imperial Star Destroyer was a cushy job, but it took a lot of data work to keep the crew of a massive ship like this fed and clothed and in fighting shape. Like I said, size of a city. Desk jobs in the Imperial Navy were no less stressful than combat ones. Please, I really need you, he persisted. I sighed. Officers were just like babies. When they needed something, it was always the most important thing in the world. I haven't forgotten the entertainment halls you wanted, but I have to prioritize processing the captured Corvette Tantai 4. Especially since Lord Vader... No, it's something else. Man, I wonder what Imperial movie night is like. I paused the scrolling screen. It was clear he wasn't going to lead me to my work until I took care of his problem. I tried to put on my most convincing smile. How can I help you? He glanced back into the corridor to be sure it was empty, closed the door to my office, and sat down. It's like this. I sat there patiently until he flashed it and his just tail. So you ordered Hija not to shoot the escape pod. No. I asked just to be sure I understood. Right. And why not? Wait, is it because you wanted to avoid the data work? I wasn't joking. Like all militaries, the Imperial Navy ran on data work. Well, okay, the rebels don't. Most officers spend more time filling out forms and filing reports than shooting at rebels. Per Imperial Naval Regulation 132, Category Chapter 22, shooting an escape pod other than during an armed engagement with an intensity classified as above Category 5 required the gunnery captain to file a Form XDM-51CT to explain why the action was necessary. This was to avoid giving those squawking senators an excuse to claim that the Imperial Navy engaged in war crimes. Oh yes, the Imperial Navy, known for never having once engaged in war crimes. Oh no, they have never done that.
Besides, I think the Senate has had enough war crimes from the Clone Wars.
Oh, yeah. I mean, if they punished everyone who broke the rules of engagements, they'd never get anything done. Not that they shouldn't, it's just... There are so many atrocities, it's darkly laughable. Bulvin had always tried to get by with as little data work as possible. Can relate. He shook his head no. Well, this was interesting. Are we trying to conserve lasers now? I think that's a meta joke about a fan theory. He ignored my sarcasm, but his face turned red. The sensors detected no life forms aboard, I thought. We wouldn't have been scored with a kill, so... Of course, now his actions made perfect sense. Annoyed with rebel propaganda that showed Imperials to be poor shots, frankly, the stormtroopers could do with more targeting drills. Okay, that one is definitely a meta joke. Fleet bureaucrats had issued a new policy that tied gunnery officers' promotions to their kill ratios. Shots fired in unoccupied escape pods would indeed be considered wasted. Promotions based on kill ratios. That just gives you a lot of commanding officers who are good at killing things but not at leadership. Shots fired at unoccupied escape pods would indeed be considered wasted. I thought this was a terrible idea at the time. The new policy would encourage some ambitious gunners to aim for rebel pilots and disabled vessels rather than the dangerous armed drones. But the brass never asked for my opinion. Fine, so you let the escape pod go. Okay, so yeah, they really should classify that based not on kills of living things, but on the elimination of weapons. What's the problem? Lord Vader ordered the Tantai 4 be torn apart until the secret plans stolen by the rebels were found. But now that they've gone over every centimeter of the ship, Commander Praji still hasn't located the plans. By the way, Commander Praji has his own hyperspace article. Tinker Tailor Soldier Praji. I'm afraid, because the one thing Praji isn't is a spy. I'm afraid I understood. I take it the escape pod didn't just drift into space? No, he said. It followed a trajectory to the surface of Tatooine. I just thought it was a malfunction at the time, but maybe that wasn't it. What if the plans were aboard? Escape pods do canonically have maneuvering jets. It did not fall into the atmosphere, like it looked in the movies. That is indeed a tricky problem, I said thoughtfully. I'd always liked Bolvan.
Do you ever stop and wonder if Vader has his own tailor that basically gives him more black for his outfit?
I'd ask if they also give him socks, but come on, there's no way his feet have ever left the armor. I mean, well, except for when he's in a bacta tank. That's what happens when you get set on fire by lava, when you no longer have the force to protect you from the ambient heat. I didn't want to see the poor man court-martialed for... I'd always liked Bolvan. And he never made too many outrageous demands on the logistics. That is indeed a tricky promise, thoughtfully. He never made too many outrageous demands on the logistics score, and he was a terrible card player, which meant that I usually managed to win extra credits from him in private games among the officers. I didn't want to see the poor man court-martialed for negligence if the plans were somehow aboard that escape pod. Even worse, Lord Vader often didn't even bother with a court-martial. Must be nice to be able to ignore data work requirements whenever one pleased. Well, yeah, he's Vader. Seriously, imagine Darth Vader filling out paperwork.
No, he's more likely to... say, fill this paperwork. But what if I don't want... Yes, Lord Vader, I'll do it.
The power of delegation. That's why I came to you, he said, his voice pleading. I figured if anyone knew how to patch up a problem like this, you would. Now, not to be boastful, but I did have a reputation for expertise in data work. I knew the ins and outs of hundreds of thousands of ever-changing forms and questionnaires and applications and data charts and data grids and charts and reports and requisition communiques that kept the Imperial Navy humming. Humble brag. I knew just what checkboxes to tick to get my ship priority service in docks, what keywords to stick into blank forms to avoid a surprise inspection, and the secrets for requisitioning entertainment halls, even when all the shipboard bandwidth was supposed to be reserved for combat-related transmissions. And I shared my wisdom liberally. Junior officers who wanted to avoid snoring roommates came to me for advice on the XBTS-7 bunking application, claiming a propensity for sleepwalking and punching sources of noise. Senior officers who wanted to maximize their shore leave came to me for help with the SSVA C2B visa, pick a departure port on the other side of the vacation planet from the arrival port, and even the captain came to me when it was time to fill out the estimated operating budgets. The trick, as if I'm going to share that trick here. I wonder what form this framing device takes. Is this like a journal he's making? Some called me a data work wizard, or maybe even a data work Jedi. No, never mind that. The point is, I liked helping people, and if they chose to thank me with little favors or gifts or credits, it would have been impolite to say no. Oh, alright, let me just come out and say it was nice to have people in your debt. With the political situation as volatile as it was, you never knew when you need to call in a favor. By helping people today, I was just helping myself for the future. The one smart Imperial. I wonder if he's already embezzled money and set it aside for, the inevitable ends. A good data work master needed to have strings out to as many students as possible. It was prudence. Manipulative bastard. After thinking over Bolvan's problem for a moment, I had an idea. I handed him a tablet. Here, start filling this out. What is this? Bolvan looked wary. That's a form INS 776TX. What does it do? Don't you even bother reading the instructions? Alright, I'll explain. That's the form you use to request an immediate Ms. extravehicular armament inspection. Why would I want to do that? That's going to send all the gunners in EV suits to inspect every single one of the Devastator's guns. It will take hours to complete. I shook my head in mild annoyance. It was really hard sometimes working with people who had no understanding of the subtleties of data work. As the gunnery captain, you are one of the few officers on board with enough authority to request such an action, and Imperial regulations require the chief gunnery officer to be in charge of the inspection. Hija will be occupied for the rest of the day climbing from gun embankment to gun embankment outside the Devastator. Bolvan still looked confused. He's going to hate me. He never wants to go outside, says it gives him space sickness. If he's outside, I said, then Lord Vader isn't going to corner him in a hallway and ask him about any escape pods. He's the only other witness. Bolvan's eyes widened with reason. Oh! What do I put down for reason for requesting inspection? Ports of non-responsive triggering mechanism. Bolvan's fingers danced over the tablet. I take it this is to lay the groundwork for later claiming that the guns wouldn't respond? Clever. The guns, they've stopped. This is just going to buy you a little time, I said. It doesn't stop the whole problem. He looked up, alarmed. So what else do I do? You fill out a form DKS77MAN. I flicked the form over onto his datapad. Wolven looked at me with his helpless, watery eyes. I relented. That's the form Orm used to request the detailed manifest of any non-military vessel. In this case, since you'll be asking for the manifest of the Tantai 4, a consort ship on our last departure, you'll need to add an Appendix P2, Declaration of Classified Military Need. Okay, this short story goes on for a while, and I think we can save the rest of it for next time.
Yeah. Yeah.
All right, we'll see you in a bit.